faced with the non-respect, by the military transition authorities of Mali, of the commitments made vis-à-vis ECOWAS for a return to constitutional order within the accepted deadlines, and after several appeals to the military transition government remained without follow-up, the Conference of Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS took, on January 9, 2022, sanctions against Mali in accordance with the legal and regulatory provisions of the institution. 2. The ECOWAS Commission wishes, through this note, to clarify the reasons on which the taking of the said sanctions is based and to recall for all intents and purposes that ECOWAS only asks the military transition authorities to allow Malians to choose their own leaders through democratic elections. 3. Indeed, the various summits of heads of state and government of ECOWAS relating to this subject have deplored a lack of political will on the part of the military transition authorities. This lack of will is reflected in particular by the absence of tangible progress in the preparation of the elections, despite the readiness shown by ECOWAS and all the regional and international partners to support Mali in the framework of this normalization process. A constant support from ECOWAS to Mali for a way out of the crisis. 1. It should be recalled that ECOWAS has been supporting Mali in a process of coming out of the crisis since the socio-political events following the legislative elections of April 2020, which were followed by the August 2020 coup that ended the regime of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. 2. In addition, before the August 2020 coup, during the socio-political crisis from April to June 2020, Mr. Goodluck Jonathan, ECOWAS mediator for Mali, met on several occasions with all the socio-political actors, politicians, religious leaders and civil society, with a view to easing tensions and finding a solution to this crisis. Unfortunately, the intransigence of some socio-political actors who believed that the only solution to the crisis was the resignation of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta exacerbated tensions and ultimately led to a coup d'état. 3. From the coup of August 18, 2020, sanctions were imposed on Mali by ECOWAS, and negotiations were initiated with the military authorities for a return to constitutional order. These negotiations resulted, on September 15, 2020 in Accra, to an agreement on the establishment of a civilian transition with the appointment of a civilian president in the person of President Bandor, and elections to be held on February 27, 2022. i.e. a transition of 18 months. 4. Thus, from September 2020, the transition process proceeded normally. The transitional government of President Bandor has provided a timetable on the basis of which it has initiated actions aimed at preparing for the holding of elections on the agreed date of February 27, 2022. A local monitoring committee comprising the ECOWAS representations, the African Union, the United Nations and the ambassadors of Ghana and Nigeria was set up in Bamako to support the transition locally. 5. Unfortunately, as soon as the new coup occurred on May 24, 2021, the dynamics and objectives of the new military transition authorities have radically changed. These no longer make compliance with the electoral calendar a priority, resulting in a marked slowdown in the implementation of activities leading to elections for a definitive end to the crisis. 6. In August 2021, in view of this situation and faced with the risk of slippage in the electoral calendar, the ECOWAS mediator for Mali went to Bamako to discuss with the military transition authorities on a new electoral timetable indicated by the said authorities for the organization of the elections. This new timetable, initially promised for September 2021, was finally communicated to ECOWAS only on December 31, 2021, after the national meetings, with a request to extend the military transition for 5 years. Noting that this proposal is totally contrary to commitments and agreements on the subject and in violation of legal and regulatory provisions, that the approval of such a schedule could have consequences for the stability of Mali and that of the region, and anxious to find a concerted solution, ECOWAS asked its mediator to return to Bamako on January 5, 2022 to invite the military authorities to review this timeline. In return, they proposed on January 8, 2022 to extend the military transition by 4 years, after having already spent 18 months in power. 7. By proposing to organize the elections in December 2025, the military authorities of the transition are certainly part of the dynamics of a violation, and their commitments recorded in the Charter of the Transition, and those concluded with ECOWAS. Moreover, this proposal would be equivalent to a total duration of the transition of 5.5 years, which would not be part of the tradition of a constitutional presidential mandate in Mali and in the region. 8. The military authorities invoke the need to implement reforms, which would justify the extension of the transition and their maintenance in power without a democratic election. Reforms are necessary and indispensable in any country to progress, whether it is in political crisis or not. Their implementation is part of a continuous and permanent process, led by successive governments, with a view to adapting to the new conditions of its environment. These reforms cannot therefore be a prerequisite, even an indispensable condition for the organization of elections. Moreover, certain reforms must be undertaken by legitimate governments resulting from an election reflecting the will of the people. 9. Regarding the security situation prevailing in Mali, it should be recalled that this point was taken into account from the start of the transition, during discussions with the military authorities on September 15, 2020 in Accra with the creation of a post of vice president in charge of security. In addition, it should be noted that the security issue cannot be an argument for not going to the elections. Indeed, many countries that are victims of terrorist attacks regularly organize elections, despite a security context almost identical to that of Mali. Finally, in a difficult security context, the role of the armed forces is precisely to defend the national territory against terrorist attacks. 10. Consequently, this posture of the military transition authorities clearly suggests a desire to remain in power for a period of more than 5 years, thus depriving the Malian people of their legitimate right to appoint democratically, in a free and transparent, its leaders. The contribution of ECOWAS to the stability of its member states. 11. The support that ECOWAS provides to Mali is no different from that which it has already provided to other member states finding themselves in similar situations of breakdown of the constitutional order. The period of coups to gain state power is over at the regional, continental and international levels. ECOWAS is resolutely committed to respecting and ensuring respect for the democratic process as the only option for assessing and exercising state power. 12. Other major events in the area of peace and stability, in particular the dispatch of mediators and troops, are also credited to ECOWAS. We can cite, for the record, the installation in Niger, after the 2010 coup, of a transition that lasted 14 months. The Gambia and Guinea-Bissau have also benefited from ECOWAS support. See about Sanctions 13. Sanctions are instruments to induce member states to respect their obligations freely entered into by virtue of their membership of the community. They are reduced, even eliminated, as soon as the authorities of the transition regimes give tangible guarantees of progress in the organization of the elections. Sanctions have been imposed in Liberia, 1996, Sierra Leone, 1997, Guinea, 2009, Côte d'Ivoire, 2010, Niger, 2010, Guinea-Bissau, 2012, and force in expectation was mobilized in the Gambia, 2017. This helped restore democracy. 14. These sanctions, it should be recalled, do not concern consumer food products, pharmaceutical products, medical materials and equipment including those for the fight against COVID-19, petroleum products and electricity, freezing of assets of the Republic of Mali in the central banks of ECOWAS and WEMU, etc. The exceptions made for basic and mass consumption products aimed to spare populations. 15. In the case of Mali, as in those mentioned above, ECOWAS expects from the military authorities of the transition a reasonable and realistic timetable for the holding of elections. The sanctions will be lifted gradually on the basis of this timetable and its diligent and satisfactory implementation.